Three, two, one. Hi there, I'm Mindy Jensen.
And I'm Carl Jensen.
And this is the Mindy
And Carl.
on Money podcast, where we talk about what happens after you reach financial independence.
Why do we call this show Mindy on Money?
A better question, Carl, is why wouldn't we call this show Mindy on Money?
Wow, at least you're humble. I'm so happy to be married to such a humble person.
On this episode of the Mindy
And Carl.
on Money podcast, Carl flips the script from last week and interviews me on why I am still working even though we are financially independent.
Ooh, I have some deeply probing questions for you, so I cannot wait for this. You're not going to be laughing soon. I got to tell you, the bull, if you could see on YouTube, has some questions for you as well.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yes. Anyway, but before we get started, let's take a quick break. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mindy on Money Scholarship Fund.
That's right. We are helping send Dan Sheik's group to Camp Phi through our scholarship at mindyonmoney.com/scholarship. We believe in in-person Phi events. And while they're affordable for us, they're not always affordable for everyone. Dan runs a group for young adults called Sheik's Freaks, and we're helping send these young people to Camp Phi. You can donate directly at mindyonmoney.com/scholarship, or you can DM me and I can connect you with Dan directly. Okay, Carl, let's jump into it. Remember, though, at the end of last week's episode, or rather the beginning of last week's episode, I said that between the two of us, we have 2 full-time jobs, but you have 0 full-time jobs. So how does that work out?
I have no idea what that means. You have 2 and I have 0. I am pretty busy. I think you're mislabeling parts of my life as not a job when it should be a job.
I didn't say you weren't busy. I said you didn't have a job.
So what do you call all the work I do on the house, like putting up trim, doorknobs, fixing the shower, all these things I'm going to do in the next week.
Is that generating income?
It will eventually when we sell the house.
Okay, agree to disagree.
Okay, so today I am going to interview you about why you still have 2 normal jobs and I have 1 job that isn't so normal. This is going to be about you. First of all, I was thinking about something on my drive yesterday. I was listening to Adam Carolla. Do you know who that guy is?
Yeah, from the Drew and Adam Carolla show, Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla. They talked about like relationships or sex or something.
Yeah, he's got a podcast and he still does stand-up comedy. And then I was thinking about a recent trip to Hermosa Beach. We saw the club where Jay Leno still does a show every week. Isn't that crazy? Because Jay Leno is infinitely wealthy, right? Like, he does not need to do stand-up comedy in this club of 200 people. It is not going to move the needle at all, right?
That is correct.
So I started thinking about that, and that's perhaps the purest example, because if you're a movie star and have a bunch of money and appear in a movie anyway, you have the ability to make a ton more money. I think Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid $100 million for his next role in one of those superhero movies. But if you're someone like a Joe Rogan, an Adam Carolla, or a Jay Leno, and you're doing stand-up comedy, you're going to make as much money as the people paid in the room, and not even that much because the venue gets some of it. So then I started thinking, why are these people doing this? And I hope this leads back to you, because the only reason someone would continue to do that is because they truly love it, because they absolutely don't have to, and it's a complete waste of their time if they don't enjoy it, right?
I would say, yes, it is a complete waste of your time to be working when you don't need the money and you also don't enjoy it or even hate it.
Yes. So keep that in mind when I ask you these questions. I hope this relates back to you. So let's tell our backstory a little bit. You always intended to go back to work, but you going back to work came at us in a serendipitous sort of way. I know we told the story in a recent podcast, so why don't you give our audience, the Mindy on Money, our lovely viewers, a quick synopsis of how you ended up going back to work at this job that you never intended to work at.
Okay, so I was an administrative assistant when I got pregnant with our oldest daughter, and it was always my intention to be a stay-at-home mom for as long as it took to get our youngest child into kindergarten. And we weren't sure if we were going to have one kid or two kids or three kids. We ended up having two kids, two healthy kids, and we decided to stop while we were ahead. So our youngest was getting ready to go into kindergarten, and this job popped up that was absolutely perfect for me, but it started in like April, May, and she didn't go into kindergarten until August. So I was like, well, I can't go. I can't apply for this job because it starts too soon, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I actually was quite upset when I first saw the job posting because I was like, this is perfect for me and I can't apply. And then I started talking to you like a week later. I stewed on this for like a week. And then I was telling you about it. And you're like, why wouldn't you apply? See what happens. Like maybe they'll hold it for you. And what turns out is that they did hold it for me. I worked part-time over the summer until she went into school. And then I started full-time. And it was not really my intention to get a new career. I was just going to go someplace and work and, that was kid friendly and student friendly. So I wasn't working 9 to 5. I was working like 8 to 3 because that's when they're in school too. But then this job popped up and I'm like, this is absolutely everything that I would want to do. And it pays well and I would be so good at it. And so I applied. Clearly, I got the job, and now I work there at biggerpockets.com. I was their community manager for 6 years, and now I host their money podcast.
And how many years have you been there for?
I have been there for 9 years. It
Wow,
is
that's a long
almost
time.
exactly my 9-year anniversary.
Did you ever think when you took the job that you would be there for 9 years? Did that thought ever cross your mind how long you think you might stay there when you took it?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever worked at a job for 9 years.
I've got a couple follow-ups with this. Before you had this BP job, before any of this came up, you mentioned that you didn't want another formal career. Do you have any idea what you would have done had this not come up?
I think I was really going to start pursuing a job with one of the schools locally, some sort of admin job or some sort of easy to do. I wasn't looking for a career. I wasn't looking for, because you were on your way to early retirement and I just wanted something to bring in a little money, give me something to do while the girls were in school.
So you could have been a lunch lady. You would have looked pretty hot with one of those hairnets on.
Aw, thank you for thinking I'm so pretty. Yeah, I could have been a lunch lady and that's not to say that being a lunch lady isn't an important job. That's just, it wasn't something that I was really looking forward to doing. It was more of a placeholder.
Interesting. I can picture you with a hairnet dishing out tater tots. It's a awesome picture in my mind.
One tot for you, one tot for me, one tot for you, one tot for me.
Yes, I like the way you think, and you could have brought some home in your pockets for me, just like Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon, give me some tots.
So you kind of hit on something that I think is interesting, and I want to delve into this, and that's that we're in this holding pattern where we have kids in school. We do not want to homeschool them, so they're in the public schools. Therefore, our lives are largely governed by that. We need to be in our house, in this place, for 8 months out of the year. How does that inform your decision to be at this job?
I think that's a really great point. And we have plenty of friends who are choosing to homeschool, choosing to do world school where they go and travel around. And as they're in these different places, they learn about whatever happened at that different place. Homeschooling was not really an option for you and I. We tried it when everybody tried it in COVID, and it was mixed results. One of our kids did really great with it, and the other one did not thrive. So it wasn't a good experience overall. When I say did not thrive, I'm being very generous. It was not a good fit at all for her, for us as a family unit. It isn't our jam. And so we are, like you said, we are essentially geographically locked for 35 hours a week, 40 weeks a year. for the next 4 years. Our youngest daughter is now a freshman in high school. And coupled with the fact that I do actually enjoy my job, I have a lot of autonomy and freedom within my job. It didn't make sense for me to leave. It pays well, I enjoy it, and I'm geographically locked into here anyway for at least the next 4 years. Why would I leave and then, oh, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm sure I will find plenty of things to do, but I still really like my job.
Sure. Let's go a little bit deeper on this. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. Let's fast forward 4 years. It's say our older child is off in the world. She'll probably be in graduate school at that time or maybe working. Our younger one will be off at school. For the purpose of this question, let's say you love your job just as much as you do now, but now we don't have this geographic restriction. We can be anywhere we want in the world at any time. Do you think you'll stay at your job at that point?
If I still love it, I can see me staying here because it pays well. I still have the flexibility and I still like what I'm doing. And being a podcaster allows me to be incredibly flexible with where I'm recording and when I'm creating this content. So if let's say we were going to go on an African safari for 3 weeks, I can know this far enough in advance that I can record in advance so that it doesn't appear that I have taken any time off, even if I have taken time off. So because of the flexibility with my job, I'm really starting to wonder if I'll ever leave.
Ooh, interesting. You mentioned the F word, and no, I'm not talking about that F word, audience. Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm talking about the flexibility F word. I think that's so important. My guess is that if you didn't have the flexibility you did now, like if you had to go into an office 5 days a week, 2 weeks of vacation, and work at a job how people worked at them 30 years ago when you did something for 4 decades, you got a gold watch, and then you went to the golf course in Florida to plan for your death, that you probably wouldn't work at the job. Is that true?
I think that's really hitting the nail on the head. I don't want to be in the office. I don't mind going into the office if there's some sort of meeting that's going on. I think there's a lot of value in face-to-face brainstorming, but also I'm at a different point in my life. I don't want to be in the office. I don't need the water cooler chats, and there's enough autonomy in my job that I don't need these in-person brainstorm sessions. So if I was required to be in the office and I only got 2 weeks of vacation a year, that's real easy to say no thank you to. But I do have the F word. I do have flexibility, and that's really, really key.
So I have to say, I appreciate your job. I appreciate that we have a little bit more money coming in, although I shouldn't because we have enough, and that's not the right way to think about it. But like you were able to buy me this, if you're watching YouTube, I'm showing our bull mascot, which he or she, I guess it's a he. He's got
It's a he. There's no female bulls. Lift up his skirt and see what's under.
Anyway, the bull. Do we have a name for the bull yet?
No.
Okay.
Ooh, there we go.
Should it be Mindy?
No, because it's a boy. Okay, help us name our bull. How about Bob? Everything in our house is named Bob. There's Big Bob the dinosaur in the backyard, Little Bob.
Yeah. Anyway, your salary paid for this bull at the trinket stand at the actual Wall Street Bull, which is behind me, and it paid for the operation when Mindy the bull tragically lost 2 of his legs. So I appreciate your money, but I shouldn't. So I definitely get something out of your job. I'm going to ask you perhaps the hardest question of this interview. What do you get out of your job besides money?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I get a lot of emails from people who say, your podcast changed my life, changed my financial life, changed the trajectory I was on, changed some aspect about my life. And that is so rewarding to be able to help people with the knowledge that I have, the knowledge that I have gained over a lifetime, and to be able to share that with somebody and for them to get something out of it, for them to take it and make a change in their life is so rewarding. And I hope that comes across as different than like being known for the show. I just really like helping people and sharing what I know with others, because when you share what you know, you still retain the information and now they have it too. So your information just kind of doubled, kind of like an amoeba. Like this is your information and then you share it with somebody, so it splits, and now there's 2 bits of information or 2 of the same copies, and you get one and they get one, and now everybody's more knowledgeable, and so on and so on. Does that make sense, or is that just rambling?
No, it does. That's good. A biology reference. Mindy, amoeba, Mindy, a Mindy amoeba.
A Mindy amoeba.
Yes. So besides your money, I kind of like the fact that, and this is going to come out wrong at first, but bear with me. I like the fact that we're known to a small group of people that we appreciate, because I'm an introvert. It's kind of hard to make friends. But when you walk into a room and people have somewhat of an idea of who you are and they come up to you and talk to you, it makes that whole thing much, much easier. I'm sure you've experienced this 10 times as much as I have.
That is really cool when people come up and say, hey, I listened to your show. I really like it. Wow, thank you for listening. I really appreciate you listening. And I appreciate you coming up and saying that, because, I'm sitting right here. Carl and I are having a conversation. It just feels like there's 2 of us. But when we release this tomorrow, there will be, 1,500 people listening. So there's a lot more people listening in on our conversation, eavesdropping, if you will. But it's a fun way to share information and conversations.
Yes. Yeah, believe it or not, we have these conversations all the time. Right now we're having it over the internet because you are not at home and I am. But when you're gone, I'm having these conversations with the bull, with Mindy the bull. And Mindy the bull doesn't have much to say, but he or she is a great listener.
There's no such thing as a female bull.
The other thing I want to say is doing these things and being a little known has opened up some really cool doors. I think we have just the amount of, what's the word, like notoriety? I'm trying not to like pump ourselves up in any way because I don't really care about that, but we've been able to see and do some really cool things. One of our mutual friends who lives by us now got me into a tour of the Tesla factory, and that was super amazing. I'm a nerd. I love robots and all that kind of stuff, so I got to see all that in person. That was so awesome. And then you and I, we've had some great travels, some speaking engagements, sometimes in different countries, which we would not have had if we did not do these things. But I think it all goes back to the people. That's my favorite thing. We've made so many cool connections, and it's pretty amazing. Most of the people who we hang out with, not all, but most of the people who we hang out with are people we've met in the past 10 years. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. There are very few people that we hang out with on a regular basis that are outside of this community. It's just, part of it is where we live. We live in Longmont, Colorado, which has an extraordinarily high number of people in the Phi community as opposed to like other cities. Mr. Money Mustache is here, and a lot of people come to Longmont, so we are able to, just meet a lot of people that way. But it's also like, these are the people that we have things in common with. And even when you take the money aspect out of the situation, we still have a lot of things in common. And I think that is, we've said this multiple times, the community is like a super equalizer. It doesn't matter all of your other experiences. We have this one thing in common, which turns out we actually have a lot of other things in common. And it lets us kind of get past all of that anxious, formal, oh, tell me about you. What about you? What are your interests? What do you do for a living? Blah, blah, blah. We all know that we're into the same thing. So we just talk about something else. And it's pretty fascinating. Although you and I talk about money all the time.
Yes.
Is that a bonus or a negative?
I think it's a bonus. I think we also talk about a lot of the things we might do with our money, like perhaps rebuilding the next house that we will retire in after the baby birds have left the nest. But just like our friends, the common denominator is money. We wouldn't have these friends. We wouldn't be playing board games with them and hanging out with them or cooking with them. We might not be talking about these big house projects if we didn't have the money in common and if we didn't have the money, period.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit here. There's one thing I think the FI community really gets wrong, and the internet retirement police call people out all the time because, hey, you have enough money, but you're still working. And I've even heard people say this. I'm not going to call it any names, but they're like, hey, you have enough money, you need to quit your job. And I think that's pretty ridiculous. I think the whole point of FI is to have options. You might be able to debate that someone is staying at their job for the wrong reason. If they're moving the goalposts, if they think they always need more and they truly don't like what they do, then I think there's an issue. But just because you're there and you've made your financial goals doesn't mean you have to leave, right?
Absolutely. But you really need to look at why you're staying. So most of the people that I talk to in this community are pursuing freedom. And a lot of times freedom means I don't want to work at a job anymore. And a lot of that is because they hate their job. They hate what they're doing. They dislike their boss. They don't like the people they work with. There's a lot of factors that come into play for why you don't like your job. I like the people I work with. I like what I'm doing. I like my boss. There's like almost no downside. And people have asked me before, I think you have point blank asked me, would you do it for free? I say I would almost do it for free because they are making money off of my contributions to their company. So why should they make money and I not make money? And that's why I wouldn't do it for free. But if they all of a sudden became a nonprofit and I was left to do this content without getting paid or not do this content anymore, I would continue to make the podcast. Luckily, I don't have to make that decision, but I think that's a really important factor to gauge your, why are you staying? I'm staying because I thought I needed 1 million, but I actually need 1.5. Okay, are you really going to quit when you get to 1.5? Oh, well, I don't quite believe the numbers. Okay, then let's go look at a different factor. Maybe 1.5 isn't the right number for you, or maybe you need more information. Go research, the 4% rule, read Early Retirement Now and all of his projections and, get his perspective. Read the actual 4% rule article and get that perspective. Read Michael Kitsis's research. Read the Trinity study. Read Wes Moss. There's lots of different people that can give you different perspectives about this depending on why it is you're not quitting. But if you don't know what you're going to do and you're worried about not being able to fill your days, try a sabbatical. Try, stick around and start making a bucket list. There's lots of different things you can do to combat these reasons. But I think one of the things that a lot of people do is they're like, well, okay, I read the 4% rule study and I believe it. And I read Big Earn's series and now I'm going to move it to, 3% or 3.5 or whatever. And I'm at that number, but I'm still just not quite sure what I'm going to do. Okay, there are some people who will never retire because it's not the norm. It's weird and they aren't sure how it's going to work out. Those aren't the people I'm talking to. The people that I'm talking to are the people who really, truly want to be financially independent and they want freedom. And then once you get to that freedom level, like I don't currently have freedom. And this is going to sound so awful. So I'm making freedom in air quotes and please listen before just saying, what a horrible person. But I don't have freedom. I am geographically constrained, for lack of a better word, because my children are in school right now and homeschooling isn't a good option for our family. So that doesn't mean that I can't go anywhere and do anything. I just need to be closer to home for the next 4 years. So if I didn't like my job, if I didn't make any money on it, if I didn't And I just said that I would do it for free, but they're paying me, so there's a good reason to stay. But also, I like it, and I get a lot of value out of the interactions that I have with people who listen. So I don't see myself quitting anytime soon.
One thing I want to point out is you are paid to do the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, but we are actually paying to do the Mindy on Money. We have not taken any dollars in ads. We have these ads at the beginning, but they are just to help our friends. We have no one who wants to give us money yet. Not that we might take it at one time, but I think that kind of, so we like this so much. To back up a second, we like this so much that we're doing it for free. We're actually paying to do it. We're using our time and money to produce this for you, the listener.
And we love you, the listener. So if you would like to send us a message and tell us how much you love us back, you can email Mindy at mindyonmoney.com or Carl at mindyonmoney.com, or join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/MindyOnMoney.
And I like doing it so much, I'm actually thinking about starting another one with Mindy the Bull.
It's going to be a whole lot of nothing. Oh, Mindy the Bull, what do you think about this?
You'll be our first guest. It's going to be awesome. I think the bull has more to say than you might think, although it might be confusing interviewing you because there's two Mindys and one's a male, one's a female. I don't know. We'll sort it out.
Mindy is not a traditionally male name, although if you want to name your son Mindy, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. I would caution against it because they'll still get jokes about Mork and Mindy 300 years after that show is over.
Ooh, the bull could be
digress.
named Mork.
No.
Should we name the bull Mork?
No.
Oh, okay. How about Mark?
No.
In closing, after we're done recording, I'm going to tell you what I did this morning, which was kind of weird and slightly embarrassing at one point. But
good.
before we
I can't
do that,
wait.
It's going to be great. It involves partial nudity.
Good.
Anyway, let's say there's a viewer in your situation or a listener if they're listening to the podcast. They have enough, but they think they might like their job enough to stay even though they don't need any money. How would you guide someone to making the decision whether or not they should leave?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I just said. Number one, do you like your job? Because if the answer is not yes, with an exclamation point behind it, maybe it's not the place you should be spending your time now that you have enough and you are considering retirement. If you do yes with an exclamation point, would you do it for free? Or would you almost do it for free like I explained? Because if your company suddenly became a nonprofit and they couldn't afford to pay you anymore, would you still perform this job? If the answer is not yes with an exclamation point, that goes into the maybe I should quit department as well. Do you want to continue to do it? I mean, there are some people who are like, well, I don't really want to continue working, but I feel obligated to. If you have enough, if you wouldn't do it for free and you don't really want to do it, regardless of if you like it or not, again, think about leaving. But, why, what would you do outside of what you're doing now? Like we have kids and we are geographically constrained. If you have similar geographic constraints and you like your job and you would do it for free and all these questions are yes, then, or yes with an exclamation point, then maybe consider staying. You don't have to leave just because you reach financial independence. But once you reach financial independence, you really want to start thinking, is this what I want to be doing with my time?
Yeah, that's so good. There's no reason you can't take this for a test drive either, negotiate some kind of sabbatical or go part-time. I think most people will quickly find that their newly found free time very quickly evaporates, and it's very easy to find things to fill that with that are much more enjoyable or much more rewarding than work. The other thing is, I always was a little bit, like maybe I had too much of an ego. I'm like, my job needs me. I've been here for all these years. If I go, I'm going to leave them in a hard place. And I left and everything kept working. So that was pretty foolish of me, unless you're, I don't know, who's some great CEO that's not Elon Musk because he's turned into kind of a strange person. if you're, who's a great CEO? I'll say, who's the Microsoft guy, Satya Nadella. Unless you're that guy, if you leave, the company is probably going to be okay.
Who's a great CEO? Scott Trench. Ooh, I have a
Yes,
little stuff on my nose.
Scott, you're probably not listening, but if you are truly irreplaceable.
I'll make sure to screenshot that for him.
Yes, yes. Okay. Anything else before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that we are good. I would like to say thank you so much for listening to this episode. I would love to answer any questions you have. Carl would love to answer any questions you have as well. Email Mindy at MindyOnMoney.com or Carl at MindyOnMoney.com. And now, Carl, I can't wait to hear you tell me what you did this morning. I'm sure
Yes,
this is
I will
going to
tell
be
you.
super awesome.
Yes, but you can also email the bull at MindyOnMoney.com.
Yes, bull at MindyOnMoney.com. Just bull, B-U-L-L, not the other part of that word.
What other part are you talking about?
It rhymes with bull spit.
Okay. Wow. Remember, this is a PG or even G-rated podcast.
It's a G-rated podcast. I said bull spit.
Okay, so I'll take time. You are not in town. I am here, and I have to tell you about my morning. I was at the doctor a couple months ago, and he's like, you should do these fancy blood tests. So I did them, and he's like, almost everything is fine, but you have no vitamin D. I'm like, oh, that's interesting because I spend a lot of time outside. He's like, do you use sunblock? I'm like, yes, I slather myself in it. He's like, well, you should go outside with maybe not a shirt and try just to lay out or walk around without a shirt on to get some more natural vitamin D for short amounts of time. So this morning, after I went to the health club, I walked back. I had my kid drop me off at the health club this morning on her way to school, and I walked to our local Walmart, not to go in there, and then I walked home without my shirt on. I walked 8 miles this morning, which is pretty cool. But the interesting thing happened when I got back to our neighborhood. We live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of very old people. The houses were built around 1980, and there are a lot of original owners. So I don't know if I've ever seen anyone walking around our neighborhood without a shirt on, which is what I did today. And I think some of these old people are a little bit paranoid and suspicious. So I got glared at by one old lady who was out for a walk. And I tried to be nice, like, hey, I'm not here to do anything bad. I'm just trying to get my vitamin D. And
Did you check next door to see if they're posting about you? There is a crazy person with no shirt on walking around Fox.
Should I call the police?
Yes, you should.
But that was not the end of it. I'm almost back at the house, and I'm happy because the police have not shown up. And I hear a car coming up behind me, and it's one of our neighbors. So he pulls up, rolls down the window. He's like, hey, what's going on? And why don't you have a shirt on? I'm like, hey, Brian, no, I just need my vitamin D. Believe me, I don't have anything to show off. It's the exact opposite. If there's anyone who should have a shirt on, it should be me.
Oh, stop.
So it's an awkward situation. So if any of our friends or neighbors are listening and they happen to see my super blinding white torso around Longmont, that is the reason I'm doing it. There's no, I'm not trying to show anything off because there isn't much to show off.
Are you shirtless right now, or do you have a white T-shirt on? I can't tell if that's your skin or if that's a white T-shirt.
Yes, it actually is a white T-shirt. I thought about doing the shirt topless and outside, but I decided against that.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. Okay, well, tune in next week when we hear about the police report from the neighbors.
I'll close with saying that you also had very low vitamin D, so I think you need to make some apparel changes while we still have some sun and it is still summertime.
Are you suggesting that I walk through the neighborhood topless?
No, I was not suggesting that, but maybe a less subtle tweak or a more subtle tweak.
I wear a lot of sleeveless shirts. I mean, look at this as a sleeveless shirt.
Yeah.
But I'm
okay.
inside because it's hot outside.
We'll talk about it offline.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Carl. This was a lot of fun.